Hello bookworms! Today I'm going to be doing the mid-year book freakout tag. I have not made a sit-down video in quite a while. Alexa, Mackie, and I have been doing monthly Taylor Swift live shows where we kind of deep dive into all of her albums, but I have been really wanting to make a book video because it's been months and I just really have not had the time. This tag is one that I've been doing on my channel for years, so I really wanted to make the time to answer these questions, to have a record of it, so I didn't want to miss out on doing it this year. I do have a couple of other videos as well in the pipeline. I'm hoping that it won't be as long before I post yet again after these couple of videos that I'm filming today. But let me know if there is anything that you would like to see from me. By far my favorite video that I posted this year was my deep dive into special editions, and it was very well received. I really appreciated everybody's comments, and if you have any other topics that you'd like to see me deep dive into, please let me know below, because as I said, that was my favorite video that I made this year. It took so much time and effort, but I felt so good about it, so I kind of want to move in the direction of doing more things along those lines, and that could be deep dives like into the Cosmere, deep dives into King Killer, like all those different things. Also new to me, but not everyone else. Topic that we'll get into in a little bit. Also, just let me know how you guys have been. Let me know some of your favorite books that you read this year. It's been a while, so we've got to catch up. Okay, so let me get into these questions so that you can find out what I've been up to in my reading year. So question one is the best book that you've read so far in 2024. And for me, that is a book that I finished this morning, and that is Game of Thrones by George R.R. Martin. I am obviously so late to the game here. I did read at least half of this book, if not more, many years ago, but I was a very different reader then than I am now, and my more adult, more mature self really loves adult fantasy, and I just got completely enthralled by this world. It felt like George R.R. Martin put like an ensorcelment charm on me or something, because I just could not get enough of these characters, of this world. It's interesting because like there's less magic than there is in typical fantasy novels. It almost reads like more like historical, but it's like medieval with like knights and castles and ruling families and houses, and obviously you guys know all of this, but that stuff just appeals to me so much. So this was basically like made for me. It's also incredibly character driven, and I've always been a primarily character driven reader. I always love those types of scenes more so than any kind of like epic battles or anything. It's like the character moments that make something my favorite. And when it comes to the characters, whether positive or negative, George R.R. Martin certainly evokes one of those feelings extremely strongly from me. So that's something that I have really enjoyed during this read through. This was a 5-star book for me. I'm so excited to continue the series, and I don't know why I waited so long. And then I saved this book specifically for question 2, which is the best sequel you've read so far in 2024. And for me, that is definitely The Mad Ship by Robin Hobb. This is the second book in the Live Ship Traders trilogy, and I read this one back in March. I actually like perfectly timed it because my family went on a vacation to Isla Morada in the Florida Keys, and it was definitely cold and like the end of winter here in New York, so I really wanted to read something nautical to like get me in the island kind of mood, and this totally did the trick. It was so amazing. I ended up finishing it on the plane, actually, like on the way there, and my mind was blown. I did not see the way that this story was going to go, but I just ate up every second of it. I really loved it. This is another one where I feel like Robin Hobb really excels with her character work, and that has really like made me love the realm of the Elderlings, catapulted it to the top of like favorite fantasy worlds for me for sure. Something that I especially love about the series is that the ships that people use, like the Bingtown trader families, they all have ties to these live ships that are built with wizard wood, and the ships have their own personalities and their own like needs and requirements, and just the bonds that there are between families and ships are so fascinating to me. I love it. I love being out on the water, seeing everything that is happening, traveling along with these people, getting mad at some of the injustices that happen, and just hoping that everything will wrap up in a satisfying and happy way, which seems unlikely because Robin Hobb loves to torture her characters, so I feel like I'm in for a world of pain, but I'm like ready for it. Question 3 is a new release you haven't read yet but want to, and for me that is The Silverblood Promise by James Logan. This I actually ordered at the airport while I was waiting for the plane to that trip that I just mentioned to Islamorada. I was completely sold on this one because of the artwork that the Broken Binding released. There was like this beautiful piece with a dragon, and I was like, I need that. I need to know what this book is going to be about. And it's gotten pretty good reviews, so I'm excited to read it. I would really like to get to it. However, I also have been kind of getting in the habit of waiting a little while and reading books once there are more books in the series out, or once we have a release date for a final book, which you might be like, then why did you start Game of Thrones? However, that is something that I've been trying to do because otherwise I end up having to reread the first books in the series, and if I can just read everything in one go and enjoy it as a complete story, that would definitely be ideal for me. Or like, you know, with a couple months separation, as long as it's just fresh in my mind. So I'm really excited about this one. I don't know when I'll get to it, but I really do want to read it at some point, just to show you like the pages. And I wonder if I also signed. Oh, here we go. Actually, this end paper is the artwork. So that dragon, he got me to buy this book. Question number 4 is your most anticipated release for the rest of the year. And I think that is pretty obviously Wind and Truth by Brandon Sanderson. It's the 5th book in the Stormlight Archive series. I'm so excited to see how the first story arc is going to wrap up. There's no other book this year that could even compare to the excitement that I feel for Wind and Truth. December cannot come soon enough. Question number 5 is your biggest disappointment. And I know that most people typically answer this question and the next question with books, but last year I answered them differently and I decided to do that again this year. So my biggest disappointment has actually been the number of books that I just have completely lost interest in while reading this year. I have DNF'd more books this year than I ever have in the past. Part of it is because I'm seeing things on like Instagram and people rave about them, and then I'm like, I have to read that, and I start reading it and I'm like, this is not that good. I feel like that's happened to me a bunch of times when it comes to some like indie published romance. There have been so many contemporary and so many romance books that I have DNF'd this year, and I have found that to be one, disappointing because obviously like I put in the time to start reading because I thought that it was going to be something that I would enjoy, but it's also been disappointing because I feel as though I've read less books this year. It's because I've read like 25 to 50% of a ton of books that I've just been like, I could not care less how this ends. So then I put it aside and don't finish a book, and then it looks like I've been reading less. And the other disappointment is that I have not had as much time to make booktube videos as I've wanted to, and that also kind of ties into the big amount of DNFs that I've had, because obviously you need to be reading books in order to be producing content. And there have been some months where I feel like I've barely read anything, or I've read like a couple of things that just haven't been memorable or I haven't had strong feelings about. There hasn't been anything that I've really like hated this year because I've been DNFing so much. I also have had a lot of things that have been kind of like middle of the road, and I would say there have been few and far between books that are like exceptional. So nothing devastating, but that is my disappointment for my reading year. But maybe we'll turn it around, who knows? Question number 6 is your biggest surprise. For this, it's that I started reading One Piece earlier on in this year, and I have really been loving it. I never in a million years thought that I was going to like shonen manga. I always thought that I was like a shoujo girl. I was so wrong. Between Full Metal Alchemist and One Piece, I'm really, really enjoying shonen. So that's been like a complete surprise for me and has been so much fun to explore. One Piece also has those really fun nautical themes, and I've really just enjoyed getting to know Luffy and seeing all of the like wild different adventures that he goes on as he's building his crew. It's been a blast. Question 7 is your favorite new author, debut or new to you? And for this one, I have to go with Christopher Racchio, who is the author of the Sun Eater series. I picked up Empire of Silence earlier this year. I absolutely loved it. I am just about done with Howling Dark. I'm also really loving that, and I just can't wait to continue on. I think Hadrian's such an interesting character. I really like the storytelling style. It's similar to Name of the Wind in the sense that it's already happened, and Hadrian is going back and recounting the events of everything that played out for us, the reader. So I always like that way of storytelling because I feel like it means that everything that is being mentioned is important, and it also allows you to experience like the highlights, and there's usually something going on, like it's very action-packed and just really interesting. I like all the philosophical stuff in the series, and I'm just really excited to keep going. Also, The Broken Binding is going to be doing editions for them, and I cannot wait to see how those are going to look. I will absolutely be picking those up. They've been revealing artwork every week, and it's beautiful. Question number 8 is newest fictional crush, and I don't get crushes on fictional characters in like a romantic sense. That just doesn't happen for me, but I decided, because I usually skip this question, I decided to kind of put a twist on it. So for newest fictional crush, I'm gonna go with Daenerys Targaryen, because I think she's just like one of the coolest characters that I've ever read about. She's so resilient. She's had so much hardship just within the first book of A Game of Thrones. I cannot even imagine where, like, how things are gonna go from here, but she's like fierce. She very much like believes in herself. She is very proactive, and she is a go-getter, and I just love her. I cannot wait to read more about her story. So that's how I'm gonna go for that question. Question number 9 is newest favorite character, and I guess I could have answered Daenerys for this one, but I will go with another Game of Thrones character and say Tyrion Lannister. I think he is really interesting so far. He's very different in the book from what I remember of him on the show. But again, I only watched the first season, so I do feel like on the show he was a little bit more like of a drunk, and in the book so far he feels very much more like a really witty, really intelligent character, and I really appreciate that depiction of him. I don't know if that's gonna change as things go on, especially with how the first book ended and what he has to do next. But as of now, like, I just think that he has really good insight. He imparts a lot of really useful words of wisdom on other characters who are looked down upon for their position, because he is used to that, and he has kind of found a way to like embrace his weaknesses so that people can't hurt him with that. Like, obviously he does have some insecurities about it, but nothing that he would like outwardly convey to anyone else. If you recognize something, someone can't hurt you for it, because like you already know that that's your weakness. So I really like that about him, and I'm also really excited to see what's gonna happen next for him. Number 10 is book that made you cry, and this is probably the first year where I can't think of anything off the top of my head. If anything, it would probably be a reread, because I did reread like all of Throne of Glass through the end of last year, and then all of ACOTAR this year, and finally read and caught up on Crescent City. I imagine that Sarah made me cry again in her books, but nothing like is coming to mind at the moment. Question 11 is a book that made you happy, and I'm actually going to answer with 2 books for this one. So the first one is Dungeons and Drama by Christy Boyce. This is a YA contemporary like romance kind of novel, but it was so good. It's so like different from anything that I really read anymore, because I've very much aged out of YA, especially YA contemporary. Sometimes I can get into a YA fantasy, but as far as contemporary goes, they're usually not for me. However, this was so much fun because we're following a girl who is a theater kid, and she basically like steals her parents' car to drive somewhere. Without a license. She gets punished for it by being forced to work at her dad's board game store, and she ends up forming a friendship with this group of guys who go to her school and who also work at her dad's store. One of them is the DM for a Dungeons and Dragons game, and she gets involved in that, and it's just so good. Like, it combines my love of theater and my love of Dungeons and Dragons all into like one pretty little book. And I'm also like obsessed with the cover, and several of my friends have said that the cover art looks like me and Andrew, which I totally agree with. I just think this cover art is like so good, and the book inside totally lived up to it. There's also like so many Easter eggs. Like, if you look closely at the cover, like you can see like if you're a board game player, you'll know like that's for sure Ticket to Ride. Where is it? There we've got Settlers of Catan, Codenames, Azul, and yeah, a couple others. And I just think it's so much fun. And the other one that made me really happy is the Critical Role Mighty Nine Origins graphic novel for Beauregard Lionheart. Beau is such a cool character in Critical Role's second campaign, Mighty Nine. She is a monk, she is a fighter, she comes from a family that owns a vineyard, and she is like constantly trying to prove herself. If you watch the campaign, in the beginning, she did like annoy me a bit, and as I kept watching, I actually grew to like really like her character. I think she like matured a lot as her character was traveling along with other people and like being independent. This was a super fun comic adaptation of her origin story. It's very short. I really liked the art in it, and I just really enjoyed this one. I think it's one of the better Critical Role comics. Question 12 is your favorite book to film adaptation that you've seen this year. I'm pretty sure that one of the only film adaptations that I've watched this year is the Percy Jackson series on Disney Plus, and I did really enjoy it. Did have some issues with it. I don't think it was like perfect by any means, but I did think that it was a good time. So I don't really have like super strong feelings on it. I definitely will watch the next season. It was entertaining, but there were some things that they changed from the books that I didn't love, and I think would have been better if they hadn't changed. For instance, like I think that they should have let them fail a little bit more without getting spoilery. I think there were a lot of things that they kind of just like knew in the show, whereas like they didn't in the book, and it would have been more fun because they're kids. Like they're not supposed to like know everything. Question 13 is the most beautiful book that you've bought this year. So I'm going to show two for this question as well. First is the Golan's UK only like limited special edition of The Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss. This was only released in the UK. It was incredibly hard to find in the United States. In fact, I had to order it secondhand online from somebody who was selling their copies. So it's not like I found this somewhere. Like it was months of wishing and hoping and scouring and finally finding one that was like, I wouldn't say reasonably priced, but it was not $1,000 like a lot of sellers are asking. So I really treasure these. Look at the sprayed pages. I just think like these are gorgeous, especially the spines. Like I think the spines look so beautiful. I love gold foiling, but it also has like the loot, and I just think they're absolutely stunning. Below the dust jacket, the end papers on these are some of my favorite artwork that I've seen for Kingkiller. Like that's obviously like the Edema Root Troop. I just think it's so gorgeous. Also the tops and bottoms have sprayed pages, and there's also like a ribbon bookmark too. And then the other book that I want to mention is Dragon Mage by M.L. Spencer. This was a Kickstarter campaign that I backed, and I'm so glad that I did because this is such a stunningly beautiful edition. It has gilded pages. It's a leather bound. I think it's leather bound. It's either leather bound or faux leather bound, but I think it's leather bound. Looks so stunning along with the Brandon Sanderson leather bounds. I love this style. I wish that we could get more fantasy books set like this. It also has a really gorgeous map. It's also signed by the author, and there are just some really beautiful illustrations. This is the original cover, so I believe that's why it's in color, but the rest of the illustrations are in black and white, as far as I can tell. Oh my god. I just realized this. I did not know this, but okay, so it's gilded pages. I just went to like flip through to see if there was more art. Let's see how I can do this. If you like go like that to the pages, there's a dragon. Do you see it? That is literally the coolest thing ever. I'm obsessed. It's even better than I thought it was. Question 14 is what books do you need to read by the end of the year? So I'm just gonna kind of like lightning round this, but obviously, I really want to continue on with Game of Thrones and read A Clash of Kings. This is the second book in the series. I think I'm going to love this one just as much or even more than the first, and I'm like pretty eager to pick this one up. So I actually put up a poll on my Instagram today to see what people think I should read next. I gave like emoji hints for books, and I'm like kind of hoping that this one will win. I also really want to read Ship of Destiny by Robin Hobb. This is the final book in the Live Ship Trader series, which I mentioned earlier on, but I do want to finish this one up and then I can get back to Fitz and find out what's going to be going on in his story. But I think I've like kind of been putting this off because I know that I'm going to love it. I know it's going to be a favorite, so it's like a guaranteed 5-star read, and sometimes I just want to, you know, save those. But I also know that it's going to be painful, and it's also going to be long, and it's going to take me a little while to read it. But I do think that summer is a good time for it since it is a nautical series. So I expect to be picking this up either the end of July or early August. This could win the poll and it could be my next read. I also want to finish up Mistborn Era 2 before Stormlight 5 comes out, so I still have to read Bandza Morning and The Lost Metal, and then I will be completed with the series, which will be exciting. Andrew and I are actually almost caught up now within the Cosmere, which is fun, so we can kind of like theorize together as things are going on and like things that we think could happen in Stormlight 5. So that has been pretty exciting, and both of these are next for both of us. They're both on the shorter side, so I expect, I'll probably pick up Bandza Morning like pretty soon. I'm really liking Era 2. I know a lot of people don't like it as much as Era 1. I would say I do like Era 1 better, but I am really enjoying Era 2 as well. And lastly, I don't have a copy here with me, but I would also really like to read Gardens of the Moon by Steven Erikson, which is the first book in the Malazan series. The Broken Binding is going to be doing special editions of them, and I'm really excited to get them. From what I understand, like people have said that they're very confusing, so that's why I've been kind of putting off reading it for what feels like forever. But everyone says that it's like totally worth it, it's rewarding, and it's one of the most complex, most interesting fantasy series in existence. So that's pretty high praise, and I want to give it a shot. How could I not love it? So here's hoping. But that is it. Those are all the questions in the mid-year book freakout tag. Usually I answer with more than one book for like every question, but I wanted to kind of keep it short and sweet this year because there are some other videos that I want to do that might expand on some of these questions a little bit more. So I hope that you guys enjoyed this. Let me know some of your answers, like especially let me know what is the best book that you've read this year. I will see you guys soon in a new video. Bye!